Konnichiwa. This is the Shogun Steve, and this is some historical background of some of the champions and different empires, factions that you can play with the new game Time Rift from Trivium Studios, made in the USA. It was a Kickstarter that just delivered. We backed this. So this is a game that I paid for out of my own money from my side hustle in history, gig economy. And I just want to go over some of the historical background of some of the different, champions and empires you can play as. So in this game, there are a number of booster packs that you can get, and the designers claim that if you open the booster packs, they're ready to go, that the different, historical empires have been set up in a way that the games are balanced. Now, of course, you do have the option of mixing and matching the different inspiration, the special cards, the armor, those types of things with different champions. But you get a variety of different historical empires and cultures to play with, from the caliphates with the spread of Islam in the Islamic Golden Age, the Persians, the Chinese, the Japanese, Europeans, Romans, plenty of different historical figures and empires and cultures to play with in this game. And then again, you can try to either, again, as we set up here in this starter game, where we have a Japanese deck against a Roman deck, where you got the Spartacus, who led the slave revolts against the Romans, versus the Book of Five Rings, Musashi. So let's take a look at some of the different champions and some of the historical background that you would find in this game. I got to start off with the guy who inspired the name of this channel, and one of my favorite people in history, Tokugawa Ieyasu from Japan, unified Japan in 1600 after the Battle of Sekigahara, and then destroyed the rival Toyotomi clan a couple years later with the siege at Osaka Castle. And then there was over 250 years of relative peace in Japan after his rule. So you can play as Tokugawa Ieyasu, one of the unifiers of Japan. You got William the Conqueror, Norman invasion of England, Battle of Hastings, 1066, the Bayeux Tapestry. So how cool would it be to, have William the Conqueror up against Tokugawa Ieyasu? One of my favorite stories in Chinese history, and one of my favorite things to watch, is the Three Kingdoms. And you got one of the main characters here from the Three Kingdoms over there with the Han Dynasty. Also, the Han Dynasty, again, you got Emperor Wu. So the Han Dynasty in China is about the same time as the Roman Empire in Europe. Very comparable empires. So how cool would it be to have the Han Dynasty go up against, the Romans? Kind of cool. Speaking of Sengoku period in Japan, where the unification, the first guy to practically unify Japan, but he was so cruel, his own people turned on him. They tried to basically assassinated him in Kyoto. He ended up committing suicide because he was so badly wounded. Oda Nobunaga. Again, you had Nobunaga, you had Hideyoshi, you had Tokugawa. How cool would it be to play as Oda Nobunaga up against, Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Great Persian Empire, or against Tokugawa Ieyasu? So Oda Nobunaga, one of the unifiers of Japan, very brutal, so brutal that, again, his own people turned on him. Cyrus the Great, the Persian Empire, giant empire with excellent road system, much of the Middle East, parts of Asia, going into India. You had Cyrus the Great here. You can play as Cyrus the great Persian leader, who, the empire that eventually, failed to take over Greece and ultimately is destroyed by Alexander the Great. Again, very interesting person in history over in Africa. You have Si Dong Hong Be, who I believe the movie, the Warrior King, I forget the exact title, was made recently, but she led a female army that did its best to try and put a halt on the African slave trade. And as I believe in the 1850s, she also opposed French colonialism. So you hear a lot about the scramble for Africa and colonialism in Africa. Here you can play as one of the people in Africa, one of the African leaders who opposed colonization and who opposed slavery. So nice diversity. You got, again, Africa, you got Persia, you got Japan, you got Romans, all different, very good for world history, global studies. Not sure who this is. Good question. Have to look that guy up. Okay, so again, you got Cleopatra here. Cleopatra, again, her dynasty in Egypt was actually descendants of Alexander the Great's generals. And unfortunately for her, she was on the wrong side of the Roman Civil War, going to back Mark Antony, and eventually they lose out to Octavian. But you can play as Cleopatra. So again, how cool would it be to have, two of these great female leaders go against each other? Have Cleopatra go against, again, I'm not sure who this guy is, but maybe go against that guy. Or Oda Nobunaga versus Cleopatra. Kind of cool that you can do that. Another strong woman here. I believe she at one time was the ruler of Norway. So again, you have a Viking woman, plays the Vikings. This is one of the fancy cards that came with the Kickstarter. You can play as a pirate. Who doesn't like to play as a pirate? How would a pirate do against a Viking? Two seafaring empires. That'd be interesting. Pirate versus Viking. How about a pirate versus Cleopatra? Again, kind of cool. Abe Lincoln, President of the United States, 16th president. You play as Abe Lincoln. No, I don't know if he has, I guess maybe one of his weapons would be the telegraph or the railroad. But how cool is that? Abe Lincoln. How would Abe Lincoln do against Oda Nobunaga? Kind of cool, again, kind of different. How would Lincoln do against Tokugawa Ieyasu? Be kind of cool. So Abe Lincoln, Republican Party, 1860 election. Again, the party that opposed the spread of slavery, Civil War, Reconstruction, a lot of cool things. Abraham Lincoln, the Reconstruction, again, he wanted an easier Reconstruction at the end of the war, Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment that ended slavery. So he can play as Lincoln. Those of you that like the cats, Emperor Uda, famous emperor of Japan, I think from the 800s, but the whole story with the cat. The cat lovers. How would Emperor Uda do? And he's an earlier Japanese leader. How would he do against a later Japanese leader like Oda Nobunaga? So lots of historical figures and empires and cultures that you can play in this game. Again, my pledge level came with a number of booster packs. So we have a lot of variety here and a lot of different situations and empires and cultures we could play against each other for fun. Again, the starter box comes with, again, Book of Five Rings, Musashi, Bushido Code against Spartacus. So right out the box, you can have fun with the Romans versus Japan. But think of all these other cool combinations that you can have. So this is a look at some of the cards in, some of the champions in Time Rift. This is the Shogunstein Time Rift collectible card game. Shogunstein out.